London, 1833. The gold band burned against Helena's skin, as though it held all the fires of hell inside it. She twisted it gently on her ring finger, the same small gesture she had repeated 1,000 times over these past 4 months, while watching the April rain streak down the windows of the modest townhouse in Bloomsbury. It was not Somerset House. It was not the ducal apartments that had once been hers. It was simply a quiet refuge, tucked away from the eyes that judged, the lips that whispered her name like poison, and the man who had shattered her with 3 words spoken before the entire London aristocracy. Barren woman. Useless. The navy wool of her dress concealed the secret growing beneath her heart. Helena's hand drifted to the softly rounded curve of her belly. 4 months. 4 months since discovering the life he had sworn, before 200 witnesses, under crystal chandeliers, and amid polite, suffocating laughter, she would never be able to bear. The memory still cut like glass. The brilliant ballroom of Aldridge House, jewels glittering under candlelight, the murmurs of society, and his voice, cold, measured, final, declaring she had failed her sole purpose. Their marriage had been a mistake. He would seek annulment. She closed her eyes, inhaled. The faint lavender scent of the house, nothing like the oppressive white roses of Aldridge, steadied her. Now the Somerset air moved within her like promise and curse entwined. And William knew nothing. He did not know that the woman he had cast aside carried the very future he had so desperately desired. He did not know destiny had made a fool of him, and Helena had not yet decided whether he deserved to know. Lady Helena Somerset had been born beneath expectations that were never truly hers. Daughter of Viscount Bancroft, she had been shaped from childhood to be ornament and vessel, beautiful enough to secure a powerful match, educated enough not to embarrass, quiet enough never to trouble a husband. At 23, she married William Somerset, Duke of Aldridge, in a union celebrated by both families as a triumph. He needed an heir to continue the Somerset line. She needed position and security. It seemed reasonable. It seemed sufficient. But 3 years passed, and her womb remained still. Months turned to seasons. Seasons into whispered disappointment. Disappointment into accusation. William's aunts murmured in shadowed corridors. Physicians came more frequently, bringing treatments that bruised both body and dignity. Helena endured cold examinations, bitter tonics, long prayers in the chapel that felt more like penance than hope. William grew distant first, then icy, then cruel, until, on a winter night glittering with society's finest, he spoke her condemnation aloud. Not in privacy, not with mercy, but before all of London, Lady Helena Somerset had failed, a defective wife, a useless duchess. She left the next morning. No tears, no pleas. Only 3 trunks, the loyal Mrs. Dawson, and the ring he had not bothered to reclaim. 2 months later, the morning sickness came. Quiet, undeniable, miraculous. Her body had not been barren. It had simply been waiting. Or perhaps some bitter part of her whispered, it had simply needed to be far from the cold, where life could not grow. Now, as the storm swept across London and the child moved beneath her ribs, Helena faced the question that had haunted her since. Should she tell him? Or let the Duke of Aldridge live forever, believing he had cast aside the mother of his heir? The answer would arrive sooner than she expected. For that very afternoon, a letter sealed with the Somerset crest would appear at her door, and fate, with its sharp sense of irony, would summon the reunion Helena feared and secretly longed for. Chapter 1. The Weight of Silence. The letter arrived with the rain, as though the sky itself had conspired to darken the moment. Helena stared at the scarlet wax seal, the Somerset crest pressed deep into it, the rearing lion that represented centuries of aristocratic lineage, and her stomach twisted. It wasn't the faint nausea of pregnancy. It was fear, pure, instinctive, the kind that made the body recoil before the mind could name the threat. Her fingers trembled softly as she took the envelope from the silver tray Mrs. Dawson held. "It came just now, my lady," the housekeeper murmured, concern threading her voice. She knew that crest, and everything it meant. The messenger waits for your reply in the hall. Helena did not open the letter, not at once. She simply held it, feeling the weight of the paper. That heavy, expensive stock William always used for matters of significance, decisions, endings. "Send him away," she said, her gaze fixed on the seal. "There will be no answer yet." Mrs. Dawson hesitated. She knew the whole story, the public humiliation, the nights Helena had wept quietly, convinced she was broken. But she bowed and withdrew, closing the parlor door softly behind her. Helena stood alone. The rain pattered against the windows like impatient fingers. The fire in the hearth crackled low, casting amber shadows across the modest room. She crossed to the armchair near the window, her place where she spent long afternoons reading or simply watching London breathe outside, and lowered herself slowly, instinctively protecting her belly. The child stirred, as if sensing her tension. Helena breathed deeply, counted to 10. She slipped her thumb under the wax and broke the seal with a soft, final crack. The handwriting was his, firm, clean, controlled to the point of indifference. She would have recognized it anywhere. She had received countless notes during their 3-year marriage, always brief, always practical, never affectionate. "Lady Helena, matters concerning the annulment of our marriage require your presence at Aldridge House tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon. Your solicitor may accompany you if necessary. The meeting will be brief and limited to contractual discussion. Somerset." "No, my dear. No Helena. Not even Lady Somerset. Only the title." Cold and distant as the marble floors of Aldridge House, as though she were no one, as though they had never shared a home, a bed, a life, as though he had not destroyed her. Helena folded the letter slowly, her hands steady by force of will. She would not tremble, not even alone. She laid the letter on the small table beside the chair and rose, walking to the window. Outside, London lay under the heavy shroud of the April storm. Carriages splashed down muddy streets. Vendors hurried through the downpour. Life continued, indifferent to the private ruin of a discarded duchess. Somewhere, in the 40 grand rooms of Aldridge House, amid polished silver and orderly gardens, William Somerset believed she was barren, that the public humiliation had been justified, that he had been right, that his doctors had been right, that 3 years without a child had proven the failure was hers. Helena rested her hand on the gentle swell of her stomach. The life he had denied now grew undeniably beneath her ribs. A faint flutter, light still, but stronger every day. Her child. No, their child. For better or for worse, this baby carried Somerset blood. "What am I to do?" she whispered to the rain-fogged glass, as though the city might answer her. But London remained silent, harsh, busy with its own tragedies. She would go tomorrow. The decision formed with sudden clarity, not because he commanded it, not because she had any legal obligation, but because it was time. Time for William Somerset to know the truth. Time for him to face the weight of his own cruelty. Time for him to understand that he had not cast aside a barren wife, but the mother of his heir. Helena turned from the window, crossed to the writing desk, took up paper and pen. Her reply was brief, professional, as cold as his. "Somerset, I will attend." "Lady Helena." She sealed it with plain wax. She no longer held the right to the Somerset crest, and set it on the tray for dispatch. Then she climbed the stairs toward her room, each step heavy as judgment. Tomorrow, everything would change again. And the truth, she suspected with a dark flicker of satisfaction, would devastate him far more deeply than any revenge she could have crafted. Chapter 2. The Duke and His Shadows. William Somerset had never been a man troubled by regret. Seated behind the mahogany desk in his study, the same piece that had belonged to 3 generations of Dukes of Aldridge before him, polished smooth by the weight of aristocratic duty, he reviewed tenancy contracts with the same clinical precision he applied to every aspect of his life. Numbers did not lie. Land did not betray. Estates, when efficiently managed, yielded predictable income. Lineages, when properly secured, endured for centuries. Everything in William's world obeyed logic, order, reason. His marriage to Helena had been a rational decision like any other. Her family, the Bancrofts, possessed respectable ancestry, not quite as illustrious as the Somersets, but sufficiently established. She had been well-educated, well-mannered in society, attractive without drawing unwanted spectacle. All indicators suggested she would serve well as Duchess, and, more importantly, as mother. Her father, Viscount Bancroft, had been pleased. William's own mother, before her passing, had approved. And yet 3 years had passed. The nursery remained empty, silent, accusing. William set down his pen and leaned back in the leather chair, rubbing his eyes. He had summoned the finest physicians in London, 7 in total, each more acclaimed than the last. Helena had endured examinations, tonics, regimens, whispered prayers, consultations with specialists from Edinburgh and even Paris. Eventually, they all reached the same conclusion. The defect was hers. Some flaw of nature. These things happen, they had said, with that polished sympathy physicians reserved for unfortunate women. Some wives simply were not made to bear children. The public repudiation, therefore, had been necessary. Harsh, yes, but justified. The Somerset line could not end due to the biological inadequacy of a viscount's daughter. He had obligations to his ancestors, to future generations, to the estate he had governed for 22 years. Sentiment had no place where legacy was concerned. Then why did he still see her face every night? William rose abruptly, as though movement could dispel thought. He crossed to the tall window overlooking the gardens of Aldridge House. The rain blurred the rose beds into streaks of green and brown. The roses his mother had planted decades ago were beginning to bud once more. The eternal cycle of life, indifferent to human failure. Helena had not cried. That was the part that lodged in his memory like a thorn. When he made the announcement, before 200 guests, timed for maximum social clarity so that no one would question the annulment, she had not wept, nor pleaded, nor collapsed into dramatics that would have made his decision appear necessary. She had simply looked at him. Those dark green eyes, always holding storms behind their calm surface, fixed on his across the glittering ballroom. 1 moment, 5, a lifetime. And then she turned, her dignity unbroken, and walked out through the stunned silence. By dawn, she was gone, with only her housekeeper, a few trunks, and her pride. No letters, no appeals, no scenes. As though William Somerset, Duke, husband, judge, had meant nothing at all. And that unsettled him far more than he cared to admit. He turned from the window. Her reply had arrived an hour earlier. Brief, cool, professional. I will attend. No questions, no accusations, no emotion. Tomorrow she would come. Sign the final documents. Her name erased from the ducal register. Their marriage dissolved. He would be free to marry again within months. This time he would choose wisely. A widow, perhaps, someone proven, someone who had successfully borne children. All very logical, reasonable, sound. So why, when he imagined Helena seated across from him in the library tomorrow, the same library where she used to read by the fire while he worked, where silence had once felt companionable before it curdled, did his chest tighten as if something inside him resisted? William clenched his hands behind his back. He had responsibilities, heirs to secure, a name to protect. Sentiment was a luxury no duke could afford. Yet that night, in Aldridge House, vast, immaculate, and emptier than he remembered, William Somerset found sleep elusive. And when he finally drifted into uneasy dreams, he saw eyes the color of deep forest green, watching him, judging him, silent. Chapter 3. The Arrival. Helena stepped down from the modest hired carriage precisely at 3 o'clock, beneath a sky still heavy with storm clouds. Aldridge House rose before her like a marble mausoleum, imposing, cold, beautiful in the way lifeless things could be beautiful. 4 stories of pale stone, windows tall as watchful eyes, Greek columns guarding the entrance. She knew every window, every pillar, every one of the 16 steps leading to the great door. For 3 years, this had been her home, her sanctuary, her sentence. Now, she was an intruder. The door opened before she could lift her hand to the bronze knocker. The butler, Hensley, who had always treated her with a quiet respect during her years as Duchess, stood framed in the doorway. Something flickered across his face at the sight of her. Surprise, perhaps. Or sorrow. Lady Helena. His voice held the weight of things that would never be spoken. His Grace awaits you in the library. Thank you, Hensley. Her voice did not waver. She would not show weakness. Not here. She crossed the threshold. The entrance hall stretched before her exactly as she remembered it. Black and white Italian marble underfoot, sweeping staircase to the left. Portraits of Somerset ancestors staring down with expressions carved from stone. The air smelled of beeswax and white roses. The same roses William had always insisted on. Helena had always hated them. Her steps echoed. No maid approached to take her cape. No polite smiles. No illusion of belonging. She was a guest now. Perhaps she always had been. Her spine remained straight, chin lifted, gloved hands clasping a velvet reticule. She wore a gown of deep burgundy velvet, the empire waist tailored to conceal the gentle curve of her belly. The choice had been deliberate. Dignity mattered. Control mattered. No one could see her secret yet. Not until she chose. The library door stood slightly ajar. Helena paused. She heard movement inside. The rustle of paper, the measured weight of footsteps over Persian carpet. He was there, waiting. She could picture him without seeing, standing by the fireplace, posture rigid, hands behind his back, the pose he always assumed before difficult conversations. She drew a breath, and another. The child stirred gently beneath her ribs, as though bracing alongside her. She pushed the door open. William stood exactly as she had imagined, beside the green marble hearth, back to the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair perfectly groomed, his bearing shaped by generations of ducal expectation. He did not turn. Punctual as always, he said, and there was something strange in his voice. Tension, perhaps, or discomfort disguised as composure. I came out of obligation, not courtesy, Helena replied. The calm in her own tone surprised her. She was not shaking. She was not afraid. 3 years beside this man had taught her how to silence her wounds. He turned then, slowly, deliberately. Their eyes met for the first time in 4 months. William looked, altered, faint lines at the corners of his eyes, shadows beneath them, like a man who had not slept well. His jaw, always held with cold control, was tight, and yet his expression remained the same, distant, aristocratic, indifferent, as if she were only another matter requiring his administrative attention. The documents are on the table, he said, gesturing to the polished mahogany desk where neatly stacked papers waited. Has your solicitor reviewed the terms? She walked toward the table, step steady. She did not look at the documents. I did not bring a solicitor. His brow tightened, the first crack in the facade. That is unwise. Perhaps. Her chin lifted. But I did not come to sign anything. Silence fell, dense and heavy, like molten lead cooling. William looked at her as if she had suddenly spoken in a language he did not understand. His gaze searched her face, seeking explanation, order, reason. Pardon? Helena set her reticule down, removed her gloves slowly, one finger at a time, buying time, gathering courage. Then she lifted her eyes to his, the same eyes that once upon a time had looked at her with something gentler than this cold silence. I came, she said slowly, carefully, each word weighted like stone, to tell you something that changes these documents, and every plan you have made. Her hand moved to her abdomen, the gesture subtle, unmistakable. I am carrying your child, William. The Somerset heir you declared. Before 200 witnesses, do you recall? That I could never give you. The color drained from his face, and the world, for one suspended, breathless heartbeat, stopped turning. Chapter 4. The Abyss. William could not breathe. Her words rang through the library like a cathedral bell tolling at a funeral, each syllable reverberating against the paneled walls, the shelves lined with Somerset history, the silent portraits of his ancestors. I am carrying your child. He stared at Helena, at the hand resting on her abdomen in a gesture that now seemed devastatingly clear, at her face, composed and unyielding, unmistakably truthful. There was no hesitation in those dark green eyes, no doubt, no plea, no apology. She was not lying. He knew that. She would never lie about this. How long? His voice was rough, unfamiliar, as if belonging to another man entirely. 4 months. She answered with the calm of a blade being drawn. 4 months. William took one step back, then another, until his shoulders pressed against the leather-bound spines of the books behind him. The math struck him with brutal precision. She had conceived before the repudiation, days before that January night when he had condemned her before all of London, before he had called her barren, before he had declared their marriage a failure. The room tilted. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out as accusation, the reflex of a man who had spent his life believing himself right. Helena gave a short, quiet laugh, sharp as splintered glass. And when, exactly, should I have told you? Her voice did not crack. It did not need to. Every word was a clean, precise cut. That night? When you called me useless in front of 200 people? When you declared that my body was defective? That I was defective? And dismissed me like a faulty investment? William's jaw tightened, but he had no defense. None. I discovered 2 weeks after I left this house, she continued, stepping toward the tall window as though distance steadied her. 2 weeks living in Bloomsbury, waking in a quiet house, wondering what I had done wrong, why my body refused to do what everyone said it should, why I wasn't enough. She looked at the rain outside, at a world that had continued without her. And then the sickness began. Mrs. Dawson called a physician. He told me the truth that 7 of your renowned experts failed to see. William felt every word land. He deserved every one. She turned, facing him across the room. So tell me, William, why should I have written to the man who humiliated me? Who judged me? Who discarded me without hesitation? Who made me believe for 3 years that I was broken, when the only thing broken here was your judgment? Silence swallowed the room. He took a step toward her. Instinct. Desperation. Helena! She stepped back, as though his touch would burn. No. Her voice wavered, the first crack in her composure, and that tremor hurt more than any harsh word she'd spoken. You do not have that right. Not anymore. It is my child. The words came out weak, hollow, absurdly small. It is my child, she corrected, and steel replaced the tremor. You forfeited any claim the moment you chose your pride over mercy. William dragged a hand across his face. Everything he believed, everything he had built, was collapsing. He had listened to the doctors. He had been so sure. 3 years of emptiness, 3 years of quiet disappointment, 3 years of certainty, and he had been wrong. Devastatingly, irreparably wrong. I need time, he whispered, to himself more than to her. I need to think. I need to understand. Helena was already pulling on her gloves, movements controlled, elegant, heartbreakingly precise. You had 4 months, William. 4 months to think. 4 months to wonder whether you had acted too quickly, whether you had been cruel. She paused in the doorway. Light from the rain-dimmed window framed her profile. I have given you the truth. What you do with it is yours to answer for. Helena, wait. She didn't. But know this, she said, turning just enough for her voice to reach him. Words clear, cold, irrevocable. This child will be Somerset by blood alone. I will not raise him beneath the roof of a man who destroyed his mother before he knew she existed. I will not let him learn that lineage matters more than humanity. And she walked out. The door closed behind her with a final, echoing sound. Footsteps on marble. Then silence. William remained where he was, surrounded by papers that no longer mattered, a legacy that no longer felt like strength, and the crushing realization that for the first time in his adult life, the first time since he inherited a title instead of a childhood, he was lost. He sank into the nearest chair, bent forward, head in his hands. 4 months. She had been carrying his child for 4 months. The heir he had ached for, prayed for, destroyed her for. And he had called her barren. Chapter 5. Fragments. Helena did not cry on the carriage ride back to Bloomsbury. She kept her expression composed, hands resting lightly in her lap, breathing measured and steady even as her chest tightened, as though her ribs were closing in around her heart. She watched London move past the window. Rain-darkened streets, street vendors shouting prices, children darting between carts, life carrying on, utterly indifferent to the earthquake she had left behind in Aldridge House. Only when the door to her small townhouse closed behind her, when no eyes could judge her, when the familiar walls gathered around her like shelter, did her knees give way. Mrs. Dawson hurried down the hall, abandoning her sewing basket where it fell. "My lady, what happened?" "He knows." The words came out in a hoarse whisper. Helena gripped the doorframe, fingers pale against the polished wood. "I told him. He knows everything." The housekeeper slipped an arm around her, steady and solid, surprisingly strong for her 50 years. She guided Helena to the armchair beside the hearth, her second favorite place, where the light was always soft and the warmth gentle. She tucked a wool shawl around her shoulders. She did not ask questions. She had known Helena since she was a girl with uneven braids and scraped knees. She knew Helena would speak when she could. Helena stared into the fire, amber and carmine flames devouring wood, reshaping it into something else. The image of William's face, in the moment of her revelation, had branded itself into her memory. The shock, the way the color drained like a tide pulling back to sea, the disbelief, followed by something that might have been horror or remorse. It was difficult to tell with William. He had always been a master of controlled expression. "Did I do the right thing?" she whispered to the flames, her voice small, like the child who once asked Mrs. Dawson whether she should confess to breaking her mother's favorite vase. Mrs. Dawson knelt beside her, joints protesting, but determination stronger than pain. She took Helena's hand, her own hands rough from years of work, and yet impossibly gentle. "You told the truth, milady. And truth is never wrong, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how deeply it cuts." Helena closed her eyes. Truth? Yes. But now what? William would not simply let this rest. She knew him too well. He was the Duke of Aldridge, a man raised to command estates, direct servants, manage crises with unshakable efficiency. The existence of an heir changed his entire world. To William, this child was not merely life, but lineage, duty, continuity of the Somerset line that stretched back centuries. It was everything he had been trained for since childhood. For Helena, it was everything too, but in an utterly different way. "He will try to bring me back," she said, opening her eyes. The fire flickered gold and shadow across the room. "He will demand I return to Aldridge House, that we restore the marriage, that I become Duchess again." A quiet, bitter breath. "Not for my sake, never for mine, but for his heir." "And would you go?" Mrs. Dawson asked softly. No judgment, only honest concern. Helena looked down at the ring still circling her finger. She had never taken it off. Not after leaving. Not even after everything. She turned it slowly, the motion now habitual, unconscious. The gold caught the firelight, warm, bright, painful. Why did she still wear it? Punishment? Memory? Hope that refused to die? "I don't know," she whispered. And it was the truth. The most frightening truth. Part of me wants to deny him everything. To raise this baby alone, far from him, far from that cold house. To let him live knowing he lost both wife and child. That his cruelty had a price. "And the other part?" Mrs. Dawson asked gently. Helena rested her hand lightly over her abdomen, where life moved, steady, and real. The other part wonders whether I have the right to take a father from my child, even if that father destroyed me, even if he does not deserve forgiveness. She swallowed. Children need fathers. That is what everyone says. That is what the books say. And this baby will be a Somerset whether I wish it or not. This child will carry that history. That weight. Mrs. Dawson squeezed her hand. A child needs love, milady. Safety. A home where they are not used as proof or possession. If the Duke can give that, perhaps he deserves a chance. If he cannot, she let the sentence settle. The baby kicked, a small, gentle movement. Helena smiled without meaning to. The first smile since leaving Aldridge House. He's strong, she murmured. Stubborn, too. He always kicks when I sit still too long. Like his mother, Mrs. Dawson said warmly. Or his father. Helena exhaled. William has always been stubborn, unyielding. Certain he is right. Silence settled. Heavy, but not unkind. The answer did not come that night. Helena ate little. Climbed the stairs as night settled over London. Lay in the narrow bed so different from the ducal one she had once slept in. Stared at the ceiling. But as sleep finally approached, one thought remained. In 3 days, she was certain, another letter would arrive. William was not a man to sit quietly, not when everything he believed had been shattered. And this time, the letter would not carry cold instructions. It would carry something far more dangerous. Chapter 6. Ashes and Reason. William did not sleep. For 3 nights he remained in his study, searching for logic in a storm where logic had no place. The library had become unbearable. Every time he crossed its threshold, he saw Helena standing by the window again, hand resting over her stomach, eyes silent and accusing. So he had retreated here, to the room of ledgers and estate records, as though numbers might restore order to a life collapsing around him. But numbers could not answer the only question that mattered. How had he been so terribly, unforgivably wrong? On the first night, he summoned Dr. Fletcher in secret, the eldest physician who had examined Helena throughout the 3 years of their marriage. The man arrived after supper, bewildered by the urgency. William dismissed the servants and asked the question he could not stop repeating. How is it possible? 3 years with no conception. 7 physicians examined her. All concluded the fault was hers. And now, the rest broke in his throat. Dr. Fletcher adjusted his spectacles, visibly uncomfortable. Your Grace, fertility is not an exact science. There are many recorded cases in which a woman conceives only after time, and there are new medical theories suggesting that nerves, emotional strain, pressure. He hesitated. The female body can guard itself, in a sense. When the atmosphere is tense, when burdened with fear or expectation, it may resist. And when peace returns, when the mind settles, you are saying it was my fault, William cut in, his voice sharper than he intended. Not fault, the doctor said gently. Circumstance. Perhaps Lady Helena needed an environment less strained. William dismissed him abruptly, but the words remained, and they burned. Helena had conceived when there was no longer hope, when the marriage was already cracking under the weight of coldness and silence, when he had already begun to withdraw from her. A bitter irony, sharper than any blade. On the second night, he tried to write. He took out paper and pen. Ink beaded at the tip, but the words refused to form. What could he possibly say? I am sorry I humiliated you. I am sorry I dismantled your dignity. I am sorry I believed doctors over you. Every sentence felt hollow, insufficient, cowardly. He crumpled the page, then another, and another. 5 failed letters burned in the hearth before dawn, curling, blackening, turning to ash. Appropriate, he thought grimly. Everything he had touched had turned to ash. On the 3rd night, he walked the gardens under a rising moon. The flower beds his mother had planted decades earlier were awakening. Yellow daffodils, red tulips, violet primroses, life emerging from cold earth. His mother had once told him that gardens teach patience, that beauty cannot be forced, only tended, waited for, cared into being. He had never understood her. He had always preferred efficiency, solutions, conclusions, and that was precisely the problem. He had treated Helena as a solution to be implemented, a requirement to be fulfilled, a vessel for an heir. And when she had not conceived in the time he deemed acceptable, he discarded her. Helena was right. He had not failed in biology. He had failed in humanity. Her words returned, "You made me believe my body was broken, when the only thing broken was your judgment." William returned to his study, sat, and this time did not reach for apology or justification. He simply wrote the truth. "Helena, I have no right to write to you. I have no right to ask for your time, your attention, or even a moment of your grace. Yet I write, because silence now would be the greatest cowardice of all. You were right. About everything." He continued, the ink dark and steady. "I judged you without sufficient proof. I condemned you without allowing defense. I destroyed you publicly because it was easier to blame you than to face my own impatience and cruelty disguised as pragmatism. I called physicians, sought explanations, and chose to believe the fault was yours because that excused me. Because dukes are never wrong, are they? Because Somerset men must always be certain. But the failure was mine. Not of the body, the doctors say. For sometimes a body simply needs time, and I never gave you time. Only pressure. Only expectation. Only coldness where there should have been tenderness. The failure was in judgment, in mercy, in everything I should have been and was not." He paused, breath unsteady. "You told me I abandoned my rights. You were correct. I did. I forfeited every claim, as husband, as man, as father. When I cast you out, I do not ask you to return. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it." He wrote the final lines slowly. "I ask only this. Allow me to provide for you and for our child. Allow me to protect without intruding. Allow me to be a father in whatever way you find bearable, even if from a distance. And if you cannot allow even that, I will understand. I will live with the weight of what I have done, and of what I have lost." He signed it simply, William. No title, no crest, no claim. He sealed the envelope with plain wax, not the ducal seal, and left it to be sent at first light. Then he stood at the window, forehead resting against the cold glass. Somewhere in the city, in a modest house in Bloomsbury, Helena slept, with his child growing beneath her heart, the heir he had begged fate for, and nearly destroyed out of pride. William closed his eyes. For the first time in 3 days, for the first time since the truth shattered him, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he had done. Not a mistake, a ruin. The question now was whether Helena would allow him the chance to rebuild what he had broken, or whether he would spend the rest of his life paying for one night, when pride spoke louder than love. Chapter 7. Words in Suspension. The letter arrived on a clear morning, breaking 3 days of rain. Helena recognized the handwriting at once. She always would. That firm, controlled script she had seen on invitations, household directives, estate documents. But this time, there was no crimson ducal seal, no crest of the rearing lion. Only her name, written with a careful deliberation that felt almost reverent. She opened it by the window in the sitting room, where the spring sunlight turned the world gold, and began to read. The first line stopped her. "I have no right to write these words." William Somerset had never admitted to lacking the right to anything in his life. Dukes did not lack. Dukes owned. It was practically law in his world. But as she continued, something inside her, something protected, walled off for 4 long months, began to soften. This was not a letter from a duke issuing directives. It was a letter from a man acknowledging failure, a man confessing fault, a man asking, not demanding. "You were right. About everything." Helena sank slowly into the armchair, the letter trembling slightly in her hands. She kept reading. Each sentence was a confession. Each line, an unvarnished truth. There was no excuse, no defense, No attempt to paint cruelty as misunderstanding. The failure was mine. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. Tears of anger first, sharp and burning. Then something else. Relief, perhaps. Or the quiet, aching validation of realizing she had not been broken after all. For 3 years she had believed her body had betrayed her. For months after leaving, she had battled the doubt that perhaps William had been right, that she had been the flaw, the defect, the disappointment. But here, in ink and honesty, was the truth she had needed without knowing. It had never been her. I will not ask you to return. I will not ask for forgiveness. I know that I do not deserve it. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, frustrated. She did not want to cry for him. But the words kept coming. Honest, stripped down, vulnerable in a way William had never been in their marriage. I ask only this. Allow me to provide for you and for our child. If I cannot be a husband, let me at least attempt to be a father. Even from a distance, if that is all you can bear. The baby shifted. A small, gentle flutter beneath her ribs, as if answering the man whose voice he had never heard. Helena set a hand over her abdomen. 5 months now. The pregnancy was no longer possibility or theory. It was real, undeniable life. In 4 more months, there would be a child. A child who would need more than her pain. A child who deserved more than vengeance. And if you cannot allow even that, I will understand. Signed simply, William. Not Somerset. Not Aldridge. Just a name. Just a man. Helena read the letter again. And again. The ink did not change. But something in her did. It was not forgiveness. Forgiveness was too large, too heavy to offer yet. But it was recognition that William was trying. Truly trying. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he had stepped down from the altar of duty and looked at his own heart. Mrs. Dawson entered carrying a tray of tea. She paused when she saw Helena's tears. "My lady?" "He asked forgiveness," Helena said, lifting the letter. "Truly this time. Not as a duke, as a man." The housekeeper set the tray aside and sat on the armrest, as she had done since Helena was a child. "And what does your heart say?" "My heart is confused." Helena folded the letter carefully, as if it were fragile. "He hurt me. Deeply. I cannot simply forget because the words are beautiful. No one is asking you to forget. But also," Helena pressed her hand to her belly again, "he is the father of this child. And these words feel real. Then let him prove they are real." Helena looked up. "How?" "Words are air, my dear. Actions are weight." And that was it. The key. The test. Helena rose, walked to the writing desk, drew a fresh sheet of paper. Her reply would be brief, measured, not promise, but possibility. "William, your words have been heard, and I recognize the cost of writing them. But words alone do not heal. Words do not rebuild what was broken. If you seek repair, prove it. Not in letters, not in promises, in action, in presence. Come to Bloomsbury tomorrow at 3 o'clock, not as the Duke of Aldridge, but as William Somerset, a man who says he wishes to be a father. Come prepared to listen, to wait, to earn what was lost. Helena." She sealed the letter with plain wax, asked Mrs. Dawson to send it immediately, and then she waited, because perhaps, just perhaps, something could be built from ashes. Not the cold marriage that had once existed, born from duty and expectation, but something new, something that began not with titles or lineage, but with choice. Helena returned to the window, hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly. "Your father wants to know you," she whispered. "We will see whether he deserves to." Outside, London glowed beneath unexpected sunlight, and for the first time in months, something fragile bloomed inside her. Hope, small, trembling, terrifying, but real. Chapter 8. The Threshold. William arrived 15 minutes early. He stood outside the modest Bloomsbury townhouse, staring at the weathered dark green door, the stone steps softened by moss, the linen curtains pale and simple in the windows. The house was small, painfully small, for a woman who had once been a duchess. 4 front windows, 2 floors, a narrow facade. Nothing like the 40 rooms of Aldridge House. Guilt tightened around his chest like a closing fist. She lived this way because of him. He had come on foot, as she requested. No ducal carriage, no crest, no symbols of power or wealth. Just a plain dark wool coat with no embroidery, no servants, no entourage. Merely a man walking through London on a spring afternoon. He had passed unnoticed, a strange experience for someone who had spent his life being seen, acknowledged, bowed to. It was both liberating and terrifying. At precisely 3 o'clock, he lifted his hand and rang the bronze bell. The sound echoed inside. Seconds stretched. William straightened his shoulders, then forced himself to let them fall. He was not a duke here. He was a man asking for a chance. Mrs. Dawson opened the door. Her expression did not soften. "Your Grace, you may call me William." His voice came out quieter than he meant it to. Her eyebrow rose, a small gesture heavy with meaning, but she stepped aside. "Lady Helena is upstairs. Come in." He entered. The house smelled of lavender and freshly baked bread. Not roses and wax and polished marble. Not cold perfection. Here, there was life. Warmth. A kind of intimacy no estate of 50 servants could replicate. The hallway was narrow, stairs to the right, a small sitting room to the left. Mrs. Dawson gestured. "Wait here. I will tell her you've arrived." She climbed the stairs slowly, the wood creaking softly beneath her feet. William stepped into the sitting room. It was simple. A worn velvet cushion on the chair near the window, a modest bookshelf, a small marble hearth with a quiet fire burning. A vase of bright yellow daffodils sat on the side table. Not white roses. Helena had always hated white roses. She had once told him they smelled like morning, and he had ignored her. How many other things had he ignored? Footsteps sounded on the stairs. William turned. Helena descended slowly, one hand on the banister. She wore a pale green muslin gown. The color made her eyes shine. Her hair was braided loosely over one shoulder. No jewels, no ornament. And yet she was striking. Not because of perfection, but because of quiet, controlled strength. The swell of her belly was visible now. A soft, unmistakable curve. His child. The breath left his lungs. "Helena." His voice was rough, unsteady. "William." She remained 3 steps away, distance held carefully between them, protective as a drawn boundary. He did not step forward. He did not reach for her. He made no claims. "Thank you for receiving me," he said simply. "You said you wished to prove your words." Her arms crossed, a small, instinctive shield. "Then prove them." William drew a slow breath. He had rehearsed speeches, explanations, measured apologies. All of them felt useless now. "I don't know how," he said. "I don't know what to say that does not sound hollow after what I've done." He held her gaze. "But I am here, and I will come again tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day you permit it." His voice softened. Not to demand, not to control, only to learn. Her eyes narrowed, cautious. "Learn what?" "How to be what I never was for you. How to be a man who does not hurt what he should protect. How to be a father worthy of the name." He swallowed hard. "How to be someone you do not have to fear." Silence settled. Not cold, not hostile, but heavy. Alive. Helena studied him, searching, measuring, weighing truth against memory. He let her. He did not flinch. Finally, she exhaled. A soft sound filled with exhaustion, and something quieter beneath. "There are rules," she said. "If you break one, you will not return." "Name them." "First," she said, chin lifting, "you do not come as a duke. You leave the title outside this door. Here, you are only William." "I understand." "Second, you do not speak of annulments, lineage, duty, or heirs. This child is not a negotiation." "I understand." "Third, you do not control me. You do not decide for me. You do not ask me to return to Aldridge House. William's voice was low. You are not something to be returned, Helena, and I am sorry I ever treated you as though you were. She blinked, not expecting an answer so direct. And finally, she continued, if I tell you to stop coming, you stop. No argument, no persuasion. He nodded once. Steady. Certain. I agree. To all of it. Helena considered him, long enough for him to feel the time pass. Then, slowly, carefully, she gestured to the chair near the hearth. Then you may stay. For today. 1 hour. William sat where she indicated, moving gently, as if the air itself might shatter. Helena sat across from him, not far, but not close, a distance measured for safety. And there, in a small Bloomsbury sitting room, with the fire crackling softly and spring sunlight warm at the window, William Somerset, Duke of Aldridge, understood the rare, fragile gift he had been given. A chance, thin as spun glass, conditional, uncertain, hard-won, but real. Chapter 9. Rebuilding. William came back the next day, and the day after, and the next, and every day that followed. Always at 3 p.m, punctual as a cathedral bell. Always on foot, weaving through London's streets without carriage, crest, or entourage. Always in plain wool, coat dark and unmarked. Nothing announcing the Duke of Aldridge is here, and he stayed only as long as Helena allowed. Some days an hour, others only 30 minutes. Once, just 15. The day nausea returned and she needed to rest. He never protested. Not once. During the first week, they sat mostly in silence. Helena embroidered the baby's blanket, a project of small flowers and careful patience, while William sat opposite her, hands still, gaze steady. Not the gaze he once carried, the one that measured, evaluated, possessed, but something quieter, something that looked like reverence or fear, the fear of breaking something delicate. Helena valued the silence. Silence meant he was learning to wait, learning not to take, learning to exist in her world without bending it to fit his own. In the second week, she began to speak. Little things at first. The nausea finally easing after 4 long months. The baby's growing strength. The way Mrs. Dawson insisted on feeding her at every possible hour. William listened as though each word were sacred scripture. He never corrected, never offered solutions. He simply listened. The baby moves more at night, Helena murmured one afternoon, setting the embroidery aside. When everything is quiet, as if it knows that is the safest moment. Safe from what? William asked softly. Helena looked at him, truly looked. From the world, I suppose. From expectation. From pressure. A beat. From disappointment. William absorbed the meaning, and the blame within it. His shoulders lowered. Not again, he said. The words were quiet, but iron set. I will not be that for this child. Not ever. Helena didn't answer. Time would prove the truth of that vow. Or expose it. In the third week, everything shifted. Helena was reading by the window when the baby kicked, sharp enough to make her inhale and place a hand against her side. William leaned forward before he could stop himself. Are you all right? Yes. She smiled, small and surprised. Just active today. William's hands tightened on his knees. He hesitated, visibly, painfully. Do you feel the baby move often? Since the 4th month, but now it's different, stronger, more real. She looked down at the curve of her belly. Undeniable now. Undeniable in every sense. Sometimes I still can't believe it, she whispered. That there is a life growing here. That in a few months there will be a child. William finished softly. Our child. Helena looked up. The word did not sting this time. Not the way it once would have. Does it frighten you? She asked quietly. Terror, he admitted. Absolute terror. Helena blinked. William had never spoken of fear before. Duchess simply did not. My father died when I was 12, he continued. Whatever I learned about being Somerset came from tutors, solicitors, tradition. No one ever taught me how to be a man first. The honesty cut through something inside her. May I? He asked, but did not move. The question hung between them like held breath. Her guard trembled, then lowered. She nodded. Barely. William rose, crossed the small space, and, unbelievable, impossible, knelt before her, the Duke of Aldridge on his knees. His hand hovered, uncertain, suspended in the air. Helena guided it, gently, carefully, to where the baby had kicked moments before. He exhaled, shakily, when his palm met the soft curve of her belly. They didn't speak. They didn't breathe. And then, as if the child had been waiting, a kick. Strong. Undeniable. William's eyes flew open. His mouth parted. His voice broke. I felt our child. Helena's answer was a whisper. He's strong. Stubborn. Like the mother, William said, looking up. There were tears in his eyes. Real ones. I'm sorry, he breathed. For everything. For every cold word. Every cruel silence. Every moment you believed yourself broken because I needed someone to blame. Helena's throat tightened. Yes, she whispered. You broke me. I know. He didn't look away. And I will carry that, for as long as I live. But please, let me try to mend what can be mended, even if it takes years, even if it is never whole. Helena's hand moved, slow, instinctive, to cover his. Their fingers intertwined over the small, kicking heartbeat of their child. I don't know if I can trust you again, she whispered. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you without remembering that night. I'll never ask you to forget, he said. I only ask for one day, and then another, and then another. However long it takes. The baby moved again, insistent, alive between them. Helena closed her eyes, one day at a time. And in that quiet Bloomsbury sitting room, with dusk turning the walls amber and the fire burning low, something new began. Not forgiveness, not yet, but rebuilding. Fragile, slow, earned breath by breath, and real. Chapter 10. Surrender. The moment everything changed was quiet as falling snow. 5 weeks had passed since that first afternoon in Bloomsbury. 5 weeks of daily visits, of learning to wait, of building trust the way one stacks stones, knowing the slightest misstep might send everything crashing down. When William arrived that day, expecting their usual hour in the sitting room, he found Helena in the small back garden, kneeling among the herb beds. She wore worn gardening gloves and an apron tied over her dress. Stray pieces of hair had escaped her loose braid. Her cheeks were flushed from bending carefully over her growing belly. It was a picture entirely unlike the ducal wife he had known. The polished, perfectly arranged Helena who filled salons and receptions in Aldridge House. This Helena was grounded, sun-warmed, real. And William stopped in the threshold simply to look at her. Helena glanced up. A smudge of earth darkened her left cheek. I thought you might not come today, she said. Why? William stepped down the stone steps into the narrow garden. It looks like rain. She tipped her head toward the heavy sky. Dukes don't usually go out in storms. This duke does. He stopped a respectful distance away, hands tucked in his coat pockets. He had learned not to assume closeness. Not anymore. Do you need help? Helena arched one brow, a gesture he had grown to recognize as quiet amusement. Do you know the difference between basil and mint? No. Then no, I don't need help. But there was a smile at the corner of her mouth. Small, but real. William sat on the low brick border, watching her work. Helena moved with care now, one hand instinctively resting near her abdomen when she shifted. 6 months, she'd said the week before. The curve of her belly was unmistakable, and somehow it suited her. She looked whole. My mother loved gardens, Helena said suddenly. She used to say growing things was a reminder that life finds a way to rise, no matter how hard the ground. She was right. William watched her fingers sift through soil, hands that once wore silk gloves now strong with honest work. She died when I was 17. Helena paused, gaze distant. Sometimes I think she would have liked to... She stopped. To meet her grandchild? William finished quietly. Helena nodded, unable to trust her voice. I think she would be proud of you, William said, with certainty, not courtesy, of your strength, of how you've rebuilt your life after... He caught the word before it reached his tongue. After I destroyed it. After everything. I didn't have a choice. You did. William leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You could have shattered. Many would have. His voice softened. But you chose to grow instead. Helena's hands stilled in the soil. She turned to face him fully. Kneeling there among rosemary and lavender, her belly rounded and her hair wind-tousled, she looked like something ancient and sacred. A woman forged through fire and rebuilt from ash. Why do you keep coming, William? Her voice was quiet but steady. The real reason this time. I know it's not only because of the baby. So, why? He had known the question would come. He had no shield left to hide behind. Because the truth was the only thing that could matter now. Because, he said slowly, I realized the life I built was empty. Admired, yes, respected. Flawless by every noble measure, and hollow. He met her eyes. No ducal mask, no armor. And when you left Aldridge House, you took the only living part of it with you. He swallowed. You. Helena's breath caught. I am not here because of the child, though I love this child already. His words came steady now, unrestrained. I come because I do not want to go back to the way I was. A man of stone. A title worn like armor, a legacy without a life in it. The first distant roll of thunder trembled through the sky. Rain began to fall, softly at first. I want to live, William said. Truly live. With you, if you'll allow it. Not as we were before. That marriage was built on duty and silence. But as we might be now. Built on choice. Helena stood slowly, one hand bracing her lower back. William rose as well. Instinct guiding him to offer his hand. She accepted it, earth-stained glove closing around his fingers. The rain strengthened. The garden blurred into watercolor. Her apron darkened, his coat heavy with water. Neither moved. Then Helena stepped closer. Her hand, still smudged with soil, lifted and touched his cheek. It was the first time she had touched him in over a year. I am still afraid, she whispered. So am I. He answered. He covered her hand with his. You hurt me in ways that haven't healed yet, she murmured. I know. His voice roughened. And I will carry that, always. I don't know if I can love you again. Not the way I once did. That love died that night. Rain traced down her cheek. It was impossible to tell where it ended, and tears began. You killed it. The words pierced, but he accepted them. They were earned. Then let me learn to build a new one, he whispered. Not the one I ruined, but one we choose, brick by brick, day by day. Rain poured now. Helena looked into his face, really looked. For as long as it takes, William said, voice steady. For the rest of my life, if necessary. Something in Helena's chest loosened. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but the willingness to try. All right, she whispered. Barely audible through the rain. All right, William, let's try. And William Somerset, who had spent a lifetime mastering control, authority, certainty, surrendered. Not to duty, not to lineage, not to the weight of a title, but to love, to grace undeserved, to the impossible miracle of a second chance. Chapter 11. The Forgiveness. The child was born on a clear September morning. The kind London sees only a handful of times each year. Pale sky swept clean of clouds, the city waking in quiet gold. Helena had gone into labor just before dawn, a sharp, breath-stealing pain that tore her from uneasy sleep. Mrs. Dawson had rushed into the bedroom at her first cry. And William, who had spent the last 6 weeks living in the small guest room upstairs, refusing to be farther than a single hallway when the time came, was at her side before she could speak his name. He stayed. The midwife arrived soon after, Mrs. Fletcher, broad of stature and steady of hand, recommended by Mrs. Dawson. She moved efficiently through the small bedroom, boiling water, laying linens, preparing instruments worn with use but cared for. But when William did not leave, even as the contractions deepened into agony, the midwife frowned. "It is not appropriate, Your Grace," she whispered, scandalized. "Husbands do not witness births. It is improper." "I am not a duke in this room," William answered, voice quiet but unshakable. "I am a man who once left his wife when she needed him most. I will not leave her again. Not today. Not ever." Helena, breathless with pain, grasped his hand. "Stay," she managed. "Please, stay." So he stayed. 16 hours passed. 16 hours of breaking, bearing, surviving. Time dissolved into nothing but breath and endurance, fear and hope braided together so tightly they became the same thing. And when at last the high, fierce cry of a newborn filled the small house, Helena's tears came too, not of pain, but of relief, of awe, of love so large her body could barely hold it. Mrs. Fletcher wrapped the baby in the soft linen blanket Helena had embroidered months before, small flowers stitched along its border, and placed the child into her trembling arms. "A girl," she announced, smiling now. "Healthy, strong, a fine set of lungs, as you can hear." Helena looked at the tiny, wrinkled face, at the fists curled fiercely at the world's harsh brightness, at the eyes, dark, wide, brimming with newness. And something inside her, the final wall she had guarded even in forgiveness, broke gently. "She's perfect," Helena whispered, voice raw. "So perfect." Then, quietly, with a tremor of old hurt, "Though I suppose she's not what you wanted. You always wished for a son to inherit the title." William sat at the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb her. Tears ran down his face freely. He didn't hide them. "No," he said, shaking his head. "No, Helena." His voice was unsteady, but sure. "That man, the one who valued legacy above love, is gone. You destroyed him with the truth, and I have been burying him every day since." He touched the baby's cheek with a reverence he had never shown anything in his life. "This child is perfect, not because of what she might someday be to a name or a house, but because she is ours, because she is life, because she is the miracle I almost lost by my own hand." He gave a soft, broken laugh. "And if the Somerset line requires a male heir, let them seek one elsewhere. My daughter does not exist to satisfy the ambitions of dead men. She exists to be loved, to grow, to become whoever she chooses." Helena looked down at the baby again, at the tiny nose, the serious brow, and her voice softened. "She has your eyes," she murmured, "and your nose, I think." "And your mouth," William replied, "and your stubbornness." "Or yours." Helena smiled, tired but incandescent. They stayed like that for a quiet stretch of time, watching the little life they almost never would have had. A child born of a broken marriage rebuilt from ash, a blessing threaded with second chances. "Do you want to hold her?" Helena asked. William froze. I don't know how. I've never held a newborn. Neither have I," she said gently. "We'll learn together." The words echoed something spoken months ago. "We will learn. Together." William extended his arms. Helena placed the baby into them. Rose, though she did not yet have a name, settled instantly against his chest, trusting with a simplicity that shattered him. William felt something break open inside himself, something old, something armored, and in its place, something entirely new formed. This was love, not the distant, bloodline-bound concept he had been raised to understand, but love that was alive, frightening, sacred. "I've thought of a name," Helena said softly. "If you agree. Any name you choose is perfect." "Rose," Helena said, "like the flowers your mother planted in Aldridge, the ones that return every year no matter what the winter was like." William looked up sharply. She remembered. He closed his eyes. "Rose," he repeated. "It's perfect." Helena reached out and touched his cheek, not cautiously, not painfully, but with quiet certainty. "I forgive you, William." The world seemed to stop. "What?" he whispered. "I forgive you." Not softly, steadily. "Not because what you did is excusable, and not because I forgot. I will never forget, but because holding on to the pain would keep me from seeing this." She looked at Rose. "From having this, from living this. And I will not raise our daughter in a house built on bitterness." William bowed his head, overcome. "But forgiveness does not mean going back to what we were," Helena continued. "That life is gone. It needed to die. This is something new, something we will build slowly, deliberately, if you still want to." William placed Rose gently in the small crib he had built himself. Clumsy, imperfect, but crafted with his own hands. Then he came to Helena's bedside. He knelt, not as a duke, nor as a man seeking absolution, but as someone offering his entire life. "I want nothing more," he said, "not as the Duke of Aldridge, but as William, as the man who loves you, as the father who will love our daughter every day of his life." Helena's smile, true, unshadowed, whole, was brighter than the morning sun. "Then ask me," she said, "not as a duty arranged by families. Ask me as yourself." William took her hands. "Helena," he said, voice full and breaking, "will you choose me again? Not because you must, but because you want to? And I will choose you, every day, for the rest of my life." "Yes," Helena whispered, tears shining. "Yes, William. Yes." He pressed his lips to her hand, their gesture, their vow. Outside, the city went about its mourning. Inside, something far rarer was being born. Forgiveness, rebirth, love chosen, not imposed. And in the crib beside them, Rose Somerset slept, the living proof that even the deepest wounds can bloom. Chapter 12. Home. 3 months after Rose was born, on a cold December morning, Helena returned to Aldridge House. Not because William asked her to. Not because society expected it. Not because duty demanded it, but because she chose it. "I want Rose to grow up knowing where she comes from," she had said a week earlier, nursing the baby in the quiet sitting room in Bloomsbury. "The flowers your mother planted, the gardens you told me she loved, the history that belongs to her now, whether we wanted it or not." A pause. "But under our terms, not as it was, never as it was." William had agreed to everything, and over the next weeks, he changed Aldridge House. The ducal apartments had been remade completely. Helena oversaw every detail herself, and William did not question a single choice. Heavy crimson velvet curtains were replaced by soft cream linen that allowed sunlight to fall freely into the rooms. Oppressive dark furniture was exchanged for lighter woods and warm, welcoming pieces. Fresh flowers, never white roses, never again white roses, filled the halls. Yellow daffodils, red tulips, fragrant lavender. The nursery, once locked away, a silent monument to pain and expectations, was transformed. The walls now a soft green. Light wood furniture, delicate embroidery at the window. Toys chosen with intention, not symbolism. A room of openness, not pressure. Of beginning, not mourning. Helena had also claimed the entire East Wing and turned it into her own library. A sanctuary for reading, writing, thinking. William made certain she had full autonomy over every domestic decision. They were no longer Duke and Duchess performing roles. They were husband and wife, parents, partners, learning together. The carriage, simple, not the formal ducal one, pulled up to the front steps of Aldridge House. William stepped out first, then offered his hand to Helena. She held Rose close to her chest, wrapped in the embroidered blanket. The baby stared with wide, wondering eyes. Hensley opened the door. His expression warmed. "Lady Helena, welcome back. Not welcome home." He was too wise for that. "Thank you, Hensley," Helena said, smiling, genuinely. They entered. The marble hall looked different somehow. Lighter. Fresh flowers on the central table. Sunlight where once there had been shadow. Still Aldridge House. Grand. Ancient. But no longer a tomb. Helena walked slowly. William beside her, but a half step behind, allowing her to take it in at her own pace. Rose slept against her shoulder, lulled by the movement. When they reached the glass house, the place Helena had loved most, she stopped. The door was open. She stepped inside. Warm, humid air wrapped around her. The scent of soil, new growth, life. The roses William's mother had planted still bloomed. Tender petals on ancient stems. Ferns unfurled. Orchids gleamed pale as moonlight. But there were new additions, too. Herbs in neat rows, violets tucked between stone, lavender bowing gently under winter light. "I had basil planted," William said quietly. "I remembered you liked it. And mint as well. And those purple flowers. I don't remember the name." "Lavender," Helena whispered, fingertips brushing the blossoms. "You planted lavender." "With the gardener's help," William admitted. "My gardening skills are somewhat limited, but I'm learning." Helena turned toward him. Tears filled her eyes, but they were not painful tears. They were soft, warm, whole. "You have changed this place." "We changed it," William corrected gently. "You chose it. I simply followed." He smiled, small, sincere. "And I've found that following is far more meaningful than commanding ever was." Rose stirred in Helena's arms, letting out a small cry that echoed softly through the glass house. Helena lifted her higher, showing her the blooms. "Look, my love. Flowers. One day, you'll have your own garden. You'll plant whatever you wish. Not what others tell you to. Whatever you choose." William stepped closer. He slid an arm around Helena's shoulders. He pressed a kiss to the top of Rose's head. Rose caught his finger, as she always did. "Do you remember the first time I came to Bloomsbury?" William murmured. "You gave me 4 rules." "I remember," Helena said. "You followed everyone, without complaint." "I still do. Every day." His voice was quiet. "Because I never want to forget what I almost destroyed. What you, with a grace I will never deserve, allowed me to rebuild." "Not grace alone," Helena said softly. "Work, your work, every day, showing up, changing, choosing." "You saved me," William said. "From myself, from a life of marble and silence." "We saved each other," she corrected. "We rebuilt this together. I could not have done it alone." Rose let out a louder cry, hungry now. "Someone wants attention," Helena whispered with a small laugh. "She'll be strong," William said. "And stubborn." "Like both her parents," Helena replied, kissing the baby's brow. "And loved. Entirely loved." They walked back into the house, not to the cold ducal suite that once felt like a cage, but to the rooms they had made theirs, a place of warmth, of ease, of choice. Helena settled in the armchair near the window, the same window that once felt like a boundary, now simply a view, and began to feed Rose. William sat on the arm of the chair, watching, not with ownership, not with duty, but with reverence. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, slow, covering the gardens in white. The roses slept beneath it, waiting for spring. Inside, the fire burned warmly. Their daughter nursed, hand curled around Helena's finger. William watched them, peace blooming deep in his chest. "We're home," Helena whispered. "Yes," William said softly. "We are, truly." And for the first time in his entire life, the first time since inheriting a title at 12, William Somerset understood the difference between a house and a home. A house was inherited. A home was built. Not perfect, but real, chosen, every day. Soon they would tell Rose their story, the truth, not polished or pretty, but honest. That they had been broken, that love had failed them once, that forgiveness was not weakness, but courage, and that the most beautiful things in life are often born from what we choose to rebuild, brick by brick, gesture by gesture. Day after day. Together. Epilogue. 2 years later, on a golden June afternoon, Helena held a newborn in her arms. A boy this time. Small, dark-haired like his father, crying with the fierce indignation of one who has just entered the world. Rose, now 2 years old, watched her brother with a mixture of curiosity and mild jealousy. "He's loud," Rose declared, wrinkling her nose. "So were you," Helena replied, smiling. "And sometimes still are." William entered the room with a tray of tea, an ordinary gesture that had become a quiet ritual. He sat beside Helena, looking at their son with the same reverence he had shown the day Rose was born. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Tired. Happy." Helena's voice was soft. Complete. William kissed her forehead. "I thought of a name, if you agree." "Tell me." "Thomas. After my grandfather, the only Somerset my mother ever spoke of with warmth. The one who, she said, remained kind long before he became a duke." Helena nodded. "Thomas. I like it." Rose climbed onto the bed, careful not to jostle the baby. "Can I hold him?" William guided her, steadying Thomas in the cradle of her small arms. Rose stared down at him with solemn importance. "I will protect him," she announced. "Like Papa protects Mama now." Helena and William exchanged a look filled with layers. Memory, pain, healing, gratitude. "Mama," Rose continued, glancing toward the bedside table, "why do you keep that old newspaper there? It looks sad." Helena had known this question would come. Rose noticed everything. "That newspaper," Helena said gently, "is there to remind me that your father did something very brave." 2 years earlier, before she returned to Aldridge House, William had written a letter to the Times, not hidden in the back pages, but on the front, where all of London would see. "5 months ago, I committed an unforgivable wrong. Before all of society, I accused my wife, Lady Helena Somerset, of a failure that was never hers. I humiliated her out of pride and ignorance. I destroyed her reputation to protect my own. The truth, realized far too late, is that the fault was always mine. My cruelty, my blindness, my belief that lineage mattered more than love. Lady Helena not only gave me the child I once claimed impossible, she gave me something infinitely greater, forgiveness I did not deserve, and the chance to become a better man. This letter is public because the wound was public. The society that witnessed my cruelty will now witness my remorse. My wife was never lacking. She has always been extraordinary. William Somerset, Duke of Aldridge." London had talked for months. Some called it courageous, others scandalous. But after that day, no one, no gossiping dowager, no ambitious debutante, ever dared whisper a word against Helena again. Rose considered all of this with thoughtful seriousness only very young children possess, then nodded. "Papa was brave," she said simply. "Very brave," Helena answered. She looked at William, not with the love of naive girlhood, but with love grown from grief, rebuilt from ruins, weathered and chosen. Outside, the Aldridge gardens glowed beneath summer sun. The flowers William's mother once planted bloomed in full scent. The lavender bed Helena and William replanted together swayed gently in the breeze. Between Bloomsbury and Mayfair, life continued. But for the Somerset family, it continued different. Not built on appearances, not on titles, but on truth, on the courage to admit fault, and on forgiveness that cost everything, and was worth every tear. One day, Thomas and Rose would hear the whole story. Not a polished version for polite company, but the truth, that their father had once been cruel and brave enough to change, that their mother had once been broken and strong enough to forgive. And that real love is not perfect from the beginning. It is built, choice by choice, day after day, hand in hand, with humility to face what was broken, and courage to rebuild it in the open for all to see.